Hi everyone. So this video explains how the debrief writer role works and what is expected when it's your turn to complete your team's case debrief. So the goal of the debrief writer is to capture and synthesize your team's analysis of the offender. So the presenter will communicate the ideas orally through class, and the debrief writer will create a written record of the discussion that we can look at after the class has ended. So as a debrief writer, you should pay close attention to your team's discussion, to the presentation itself, and then also any feedback received during class, because there may be questions, there may be comments, there may be other things that come up during the presentation that you'll want to add into that debrief. So don't just check out just because your small group discussion is over. By the following Sunday or Friday, in the case of Module 5, you're going to submit your team's debrief to the designated discussion board. Your debrief should be written in college-level paragraph format. This is not a list of bullet points. It's not a copy notes. It's not a transcript of exactly what was said during class. This is a comprehensive, short overview, short debrief that explains the most important conclusions your team reached and also explains why those conclusions matter. Now, it's important that a strong debrief will go beyond simply describing what happened during the discussion. I really want a debrief to get into how the correctional concepts that we talked about this week apply to your offender, what issues there are in terms of strengths, opportunities, risks, barriers, etc. But most importantly, I want you to support those conclusions with evidence from the course materials and from the external content that your team gathers. So it's very much, it's an analysis, it's a case debrief. It's not a summary of your discussion. So for example, a debrief could say, our team discussed that offender X has a history of substance abuse and it was going to struggle during reentry. Okay, that's helpful, but very limited. So a stronger debrief would get into the weeds a little bit more. So why does substance abuse create reentry challenges, right? What did you find in your research that said, what is making substance abuse a challenge for reentry? Connect that back to those research studies in particular, and you have to use APA in-text citations. And then what kind of recommendations or interventions do you recommend to improve the outcomes for your offender? And again, going back to that evidence, because this should not just be like, hey, we think substance abuse treatment would help. You should have something there that says substance abuse treatment helps empirically. We're not just making willy-nilly recommendations, because, if you think about it, every time you make a recommendation in the correctional system, that's probably going to be money. So you have to think about, is this worth my money, right? Is this worth the amount of effort to put in? Do we know that this is going to produce an outcome that we want? So a strong debrief will typically by identifying the major correctional issues that were discussed by the team, explains how the issue affects the offender, discusses the relevant research or evidence, and then concludes with the team's recommendations and concerns. You want to think of this as a short professional case analysis, not just a set of meeting notes. Another part of this role is helping readers locate the evidence that supports your team's conclusions. So again, you're going to have to include the articles that you guys used. You're going to have to include in-text citations. So you're going to need to know not only what evidence your team found, but how it specifically applies to your particular offender. One of the things that will help prepare you for this role is making sure that you have access to all the sources that were used by your classmates when preparing for class. And so this is going to be a joint effort between you and the recorder, because the recorder is going to gather those links, gather those article titles, and then you're going to actually turn that into APA format. So you want to make sure that you have access to all of the links and the recorded information as soon as possible. My recommendation to the recorder is to take notes on a shared document of some kind. So you can use Google Documents within Canvas for your team. You can set up your own external document. You can use a different program if you like. Something that as soon as you write those notes, your teammates have access to them, because you as the debrief writer are going to want really good notes from your recorder to make sure that you're prepared for the debrief. Now, something that's unique to this role that I really want to make sure is clear. This is a written assignment, which means It should reflect your own work and your own understanding. You are welcome to use AI tools for writing assistance. That means things like editing. After I've already written it, I want to edit for grammar, I want to edit for organization. You can use it for proofreading. Did I spell things right? But AI should help you communicate your own ideas, not replace your thinking, okay? The analysis, the conclusions, all of the insights should come from you and your team's discussion. I do not want you to just take notes and throw them into an AI and call it a day. When I grade your debriefs, I am not grading you on whether you reach the same conclusions that I would about your offender, okay? I'm looking at the quality of your analysis. And again, this is very similar to the presenter's grading. Did you apply the week's concepts to your offender? Did you explain those concepts, why those concepts matter, and did you explain them clearly? And then did you support your conclusions with evidence? Did you bring in that external evidence, those articles, the empirical data, to really help the reader understand the implications for both the offender and for the broader correctional system? A strong debrief will demonstrate critical thinking, will connect those course concepts specifically to offender experiences, and will provide all those APA resources to support further learning. Weaker debriefs will either focus just on summary, like, hey, we said this, we said that, we said this, we said that. It will repeat a lot of information from the offender profile. Remember, this is information I already gave you. I already know it. I don't want to hear it back again. I want to understand the implications of that information. And a weak debrief might also just make claims without explaining any reasoning behind them. So we suggest substance abuse class. Okay, why, right? Like what is the value? What is the point of that? What kind of treatment program should they follow? So you want to be really cautious about that. So basically, I'm really less interested in the actual conclusion you came to and more interested in how you got to your conclusion. That's what I care about, the thinking behind your conclusions. So to be successful in this role, you should pay good attention during your class discussion. You should make sure that you have access to those source links from your teammates. You should focus on the analysis rather than just summarizing your conversation. And I would recommend beginning your debrief as soon as possible after class. I think the best debriefs are going to be written when the discussion is fresh in your mind and before you've forgotten some important details. You're basically the historian of your team's work. So your recorder took notes on the spot, but you're really summing this up and putting this into a nice readable format that's going to preserve that knowledge throughout the course and help people understand how the different aspects of corrections affect offenders and help them prepare for the final exam. So good luck, and I look forward to reading your debriefs throughout the semester.